Hi guys, this is the first of several video lessons that we're going to have. We're starting a new chapter, chapter 17, and this is on the Industrial Revolution and European society. So now would be a good time, if you haven't done so already, to take out a notebook and something to write with, and I'll give you a minute to do that. And then once you get that out, our chapter heading that you should write down in your notes is Industrial Revolution and European Society. So I'll give you a second to get that written down. And we're going to be learning about particularly the British aspect of this, because Britain is the hub of the Industrial Revolution. So with that in mind, we will learn a little bit about its effect in America, and on some other European countries, but mostly the focus here is going to be on Britain. So with the Industrial Revolution, if you wanted to put a subheading, that could be Industrial Revolution, but you already have that up there. So anyway, the Industrial Revolution, it began right before the French Revolution. So if you think back to the French Revolution, the 1780s, late 1780s, the Industrial Revolution was just starting in Great Britain right before the French Revolution occurred. And unlike the American Revolution and the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution was not violent, first of all. And second, it wasn't something that happened very quickly. With both the American and the French revolutions, which were political revolutions, they were very quick to start. They were violent, and at the conclusion, things were vastly different. Now, with the Industrial Revolution, it started slowly, it gained momentum slowly, and it occurred over a long span, but still, at the end, things are different, just in a different way. It's not going to be so much a political as an economic revolution, really. So let's talk about the beginnings of industrialism. So the beginnings of industry in Britain. There were three things that came together they all combined to help make the Industrial Revolution successful in Great Britain. So all of these things happening at the same time, they're happening concurrently. They all come together to help Great Britain have a successful Industrial Revolution. And the first thing that happened in this nature is they had an adequate food supply. So it's very hard to have an Industrial Revolution, to have successful industry, if you can't feed everyone. And what caused the adequate food supply was earlier, before the Industrial Revolution, there was an agricultural revolution. So there were major changes made in agriculture just before the Industrial Revolution. And this caused there to be a larger food supply, which meant it was much easier to feed the population that was growing. And this leads us into our second point, which is a large and mobile workforce. So there were more people available to work jobs, and they were able to move. So before, with agriculture, a lot of people farmed. A very large percentage of people in Great Britain farmed. Just like in America before the Revolution, roughly 90% of Americans farmed in early American history. So with the agricultural revolution, fewer people were needed to produce the same amount of food. So that meant that farms didn't need to employ farmhands anymore nearly at the same level as they had before. So there were more people that were free to move around and find work elsewhere. So we have a food supply and we have a workforce. The third thing was the expansion of trade. There was a market for products to be produced. It does you no good to produce a bunch of goods if there's no one to buy them. That's how businesses go under. So here we have adequate food supply to feed all the workers. We have workers, and we have people that are willing to buy. We have trade. So those things come together at the same time, and they help to fuel the Industrial Revolution. Now, in addition to all these things, there's something else that really helped. It's not one of the three things. It's just kind of on the side. But the political and the social climate, so really the culture of Britain as it was adapting during this time, was very friendly to industry. This isn't true in other countries during this time period. Some countries had very restrictive laws on businesses, very restrictive laws on trade, very high taxes on businesses, which, by the way, is a big complaint now in America, is our high tax rate on corporations. And what is that doing? It's causing businesses to move out of the country, to go places where the tax rate is lower. So here in Britain, they didn't have that problem. The climate, economically and politically and socially, it was pretty much all friendly toward business. For example, they had a patent office in Great Britain, and this protected inventors' inventions. Either whether it's a process or a product that they were making, it protected whatever they were making and allowed them to make a profit on it. That's just one example. All right, now let's talk about the agricultural revolution, which was one of the things that led to the adequate food supply. So if you want a subheading in your notes, it would be agricultural revolution. Two people played a major role in the agricultural revolution. First is Jethro Tull. Now, if you're a classic rock fan, this isn't the musician. That's way, way, way later. Same spelling, but Jethro Tull, T-U-L-L, he invented something called the seed drill. Now, before Jethro Tull's seed drill, when you planted something, like if you're planting corn or beans, you couldn't just put one corn kernel in the ground. You'd have to scatter seed everywhere. And that was very wasteful. If you think of the parable of the sower that Jesus told, how the sower was scattering seed, and some fell on the rocks, some fell on the path, the birds ate some up, and some fell in good soil, some fell where there were weeds. So that's actually what happened with farmers. So they would scatter seed, and not all of it would grow. Well, with a seed drill, it would actually literally would drill a hole or poke a hole in the ground and plant the seed, and so every seed was in a hole where it was supposed to be. That meant that seed wasn't being wasted, so there's less seed that a farmer has to buy to plant his field. So this really, it helps farmers cut costs, and it also means that there's a more productive crop as well because all the seed's growing in good soil. Now let's move on to a gentleman by the name of Charles Townshend. It's T-O-W-N-S-H-E-N-D. T-O-W-N-S-H-E-N-D. He improvised with crop rotation. Before, crop rotation in Britain was you plant your field, and then after a couple of years of planting one crop, you just let it lay bare. You let it lay fallow for a year. You don't use it, period. Well, he realized that you don't need to do that. You can plant one crop, and then if you plant another crop another year, it'll put nutrients back into the ground that were being taken. So, and some of these crops you could actually use on your off years to graze. So animals would be eating them, and it would be productive all the way around. So you don't have all these fields laying unused for 1 year out of every 4 or 7 years that they were doing this. So that means that your fields are 1/4 or 1/7 more productive, which is a big deal. So these two gentlemen play major roles in the agricultural revolution. Something else that helped the agricultural revolution was the enclosure movement, which basically people that were landowners were starting to use, there were public lands that were just used for grazing. Anyone could graze their animals there. Well, Britain changed their laws during this time period so that landowners could actually purchase these public lands and enclose them and use them to plant things in or use them as private grazing grounds. So there wasn't competition for grazing among all these different animals. And it actually made the farming, whether it was raising livestock or if people were raising crops, it made it much more productive because you don't have everyone fighting over the same piece of ground. So these things all came together to fuel the agricultural revolution. Now let's talk about the textile industry. So that would be another subheading if you want to put one in your notes. The textile industry. Textiles are cloth products. So think clothing or rugs or things like that. What helped drive the textile industry during the Industrial Revolution was cotton. Cotton wasn't very widely used at first because of several reasons. One is the wool producers tried to get Parliament to pass laws making it harder to use cotton because cotton was going to cut into their business. Another thing was it's very difficult during this time period to harvest cotton in a way that makes it cost effective to use. But you're going to see many advancements made in this area. So several things help drive the textile industry, making it much faster. And the faster the textile industry moves, the cheaper clothing or cloth is. The cheaper cloth is, the more people are able to buy it, which then turns into a cycle that helps the business grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So one person in your notes that you should have is John Kay, K-A-Y, John Kay. And he invents something called the flying shuttle. It's not like flying shuttle, like space shuttle, but whenever someone is weaving cloth, they have this rod, it's called a shuttle, and they use it to weave a thread. You have threads going vertically, and they use it to weave a thread in horizontally. Well, he made a shuttle that made it possible for the weaver to work much faster. And the weaver could also work on a wider piece of cloth, so instead of them having to work on a thin piece of cloth, they could make more square feet when they were working. So that's one of the first advancements. And then we start seeing things like the spinning jenny, which it was just a colloquial term to mean the spinning engine. And this was something that allowed automation to happen with the textile industry, very slowly at first. So anyway, after we get the flying shuttle, we get the spinning jenny, or the engine, so that you can have the automated loom. And shortly thereafter, almost in 1780, so 1779, a man by the name of Samuel Crompton, that's C-R-O-M-P-T-O-N, Samuel Crompton, he invented something called the spinning mule, which it allowed one person, before where they would work with a few hundred threads at a time at the most, this spinning mule allowed them to work with over 1,000 pieces of thread at one time, making a piece of cloth. And 6 years later, so in 1885, the spinning mule was converted to be used with steam power. So not only were they working with a much larger amount of threads, but then steam power made the machinery automated, so the process worked more quickly. Also in the textile industry, you may have been thinking this when I mentioned cotton. I would say this is probably the most important advancement in the textile industry. And bonus point for you, not really, because I'm not here to see it, but at least give yourself a check or a gold star if you thought of the name Eli Whitney. Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin. In 1793, Eli Whitney makes the cotton gin. And before the cotton gin, I don't know if you've ever held a piece of cotton, but you open the cotton boll to cotton flour, and there are pieces of cotton inside. And the seeds are stuck inside the cotton material, and you used to have to, before the cotton gin, pick them out by hand. Well, what the cotton gin did was it had teeth like this, and it would pull the cotton through the teeth and separate the cotton from the seeds. And it allowed one person to do the same amount of work as far as getting seeds out of cotton as 50 people. So it essentially condensed the work of 50 people into one person in the cotton industry. That is a huge deal. It made cotton way more affordable to use. So really, I would say this is the most important invention, the most important advancement in the textile industry, period.